Well, it is the top of the hour and you are the last one of the day, so don't want to start late, want to get us all started on time. So I want to welcome everyone to our session of the day, our closing keynote speaker today of the symposium on driving student success with career connected learning. I'm excited to introduce to you our next presenters, Dr. Melvin Brown and Dr. Angie Pelton from Montgomery Public Schools in Alabama. They will share how they have built strategic partnerships that enhance educators' effectiveness and improve learner outcomes. And I'm telling you, this is going to be fire. It's amazing the work that they're doing. So I have two people to introduce. So I'm going to give you a little brief snippet about each one of their works. And let me just say, it's only a snippet because they've done some work. And as I'm doing this work, Dr. Melvin J. Brown just received an award for your work around equity and excellence a few last week sometime. So congratulations, brother, on that award.
Thank you.
You are serving as you previously served as a superintendent in Reynoldsburg City School District and currently serving in Montgomery Public Schools. You've served as superintendent in resident and visiting professor in Ohio State University.
OH.
Listen,
Any Ohio folks on here will get that.
listen, I already knew it was something like that. And for you non-Ohio folks, we just go with it and just roll with it. You formerly served as a deputy superintendent in Cuyahoga Falls City Schools. Did I get that correct, sir?
Cuyahoga Falls, you're close, not bad.
Okay, and prior as the director of human resources. So this brother got a whole bunch of stuff behind him. He served as regional vice president for Mosaic Education and the associate superintendent for Press William County. I didn't know you did all that. Additionally, 6 years of experience as an elementary school people, my friends, the elementary folks, and 2 years as middle school principal. So his distinguished careers serves across a variety of number of schools. He is the proud member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and serves as several boards and he serves on several boards. He chaired various committees and is active in AASA and other national network. He is the 2021 honoree of Central Ohio's A Tribute to African Americans Committee and a co-author. So he writes too. So not only does he speak, he got some jokes, but he is also a co-author of STEM Century. It takes a village to raise a 21st century graduate. Let's welcome Dr. Melvin Brown. And along with Dr. Melvin Brown, we have Dr. Angie Pelton, who is currently the Professional Development Director for Montgomery Public Schools in Alabama. She previously worked for the Alabama State Department, and she is a specialist. She provides professional learning from Alabama Math, Science, and Technology Initiatives, the Alabama Regional In-Service Center, the Professional Learning Department, and various state and national conferences. So we can see she is all things Alabama when it comes to doing this deep work. We are super excited to have this tag team Wonder Twin activate partnerships. So what I'm going to do is just remind all of our participants, if you are sharing with us and talking to us, make sure you put that in the chat. And of course, I'll look at that for Dr. Brown and Dr. Pelton. But if you have a specific question, make sure you place that in the Q&A so we can ask them that at the end of their session while they're with us. Not to take up any more time. Introducing the dynamic duo from Montgomery, Dr. Melvin Brown and Angie Pelton.
Good afternoon, everybody. We didn't realize we were going to be the last ones of the day, but so we're the ones stopping you from actually getting real drinks. So we want to get through that. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. I'm the superintendent here at Montgomery Public Schools in Montgomery, Alabama. Excited about the work that we're doing here. I'm in my second year here, as is Angie. We have a lot of work to do in order to change some things that have been misplaced over the years, and we've built a fantastic team that is working to build equity for all of our folks, all of our kids, to get an opportunity to be successful. This partnership and creating other strategic partnerships helps us to address some of those things, and today we're just excited to be able to share some of that with you. Quick shout out to Michelle Burns, who gave me an IO to my OH. Let's go Bucks. I'm gonna leave it at that. So to start off, am I sharing my screen? Is that how we're doing this?
Yes, you're doing this.
Okay. So let me share this. Can everybody see that? We good? All right, let's roll. Today we're talking about strategic partnerships that enhance educator effectiveness and improve learner outcomes. The whole notion of doing that was really to give our kids and our teachers an opportunity to see what could be possible in classrooms to kind of frame a new 21st century orientation toward education and changing, moving from a model that wasn't as advanced as we would have liked it to be. It's been a lot of work to get that going. We've had to take a look at ourselves in terms of the types of work we have done and how we can build on what's in place. And we'll talk a little bit about mindset and things of that nature throughout this process. So we'll just get started with that. First of all, who are we? Montgomery Public Schools is in Montgomery, Alabama. We're roughly 26,000 students strong. We have about 65% free reduced lunch. And we have a unique situation in which we have a series of magnet schools and a series of what we call traditional schools. Our traditional schools tend to have higher concentrations of poverty in them, and as a result, have higher concentrations of lack of equity. And those are things that we are working to address in many ways. Getting partnerships to the table helps us to address some of those things. So it's important that we're able to pay attention to that and be very intentional about how we engage people in terms of what we do there. Our magnet schools have been very successful. Just for the record, we have the number 1, number 7, and number 16 high schools in the state. And at the same time, we have some of the schools at the other end of the continuum. So in terms of how we build equity, those are things that we know we need to address. In terms of our ADM, as I mentioned, we have roughly 26,000 students, 50 schools across our district. And we historically have been an underserved district in terms of financing. The way our funding structure works here in Alabama, the local revenue supports so much of what you do with your general fund. And for years, we were unable to pass any type of legislation to allow us to get additional funding, which would put us on par with some of our more urban neighbors, such as Birmingham or Huntsville or Mobile. Fortunately, the public came together in 2020 and voted to support that. And it brought us some more funds and made us a little more equitable in terms of what that looked like. But we're talking about 30 to 40 years of neglect in terms of what finances were able to support. So a lot of what we've been trying to build is really to reframe what our instructional program looks like, at the same time addressing our infrastructure and our building situations across the district. So it gives you a bit of who we are, roughly 3,500 employees that serve our kids. And we're the 3rd largest school district in the state. So our journey, we're in a position of understanding that our potential is great if we're able to bring all of our resources together and align our mission to make sure we're focused on the right things. We can do some amazing things for our kids. However, we had to address infrastructure and foundational things first. That meant changing what teaching and learning look like in classrooms. I'm a firm believer, and we'll get into this a little bit later as well, but I'm a firm believer that if kids learn information in classrooms and they can apply that in real life context, that gives them a better opportunity to not only retain that information, but to truly learn it. We had an orientation where we basically wanted to make sure kids pass tests. You've got to do some things in classrooms to make sure that happens, and that information sticks. Not only do they pass the tests, now they understand how it makes a role in their lives and how it gives them an opportunity to have a voice and be a player, if you will, in the global spectrum in terms of what the world has to offer. So our goal is really to unlock what that potential looks like and eventually get to the point where we stop talking about potential because we're actually reaching it. We're actually using it to help our kids carve an opportunity for a brighter future. The whole notion of what our kids can do to give back to the world is what we want them to take away. We have constructed a portrait of a graduate, which we just finished up, which will be rolling out very soon, which really captures what that looks like for our kids to compete on a global scale. And this partnership helps us to enhance that. So those things go together. In terms of working with Defined, our goal, our job is to really get our industry partners to the table to help them align what classroom skills look like when it comes to future workforce demands. We have a huge military presence here in Montgomery, which has brought some unique opportunities for our kids once they graduate from high school. We want them to be prepared for that. We also have an influx of industry that is coming into the city as well, that we want to also prepare our kids for. Another huge partner for us is Hyundai. That plant is here. And we want to make sure our kids are able to not only do those jobs when they're available, but to eventually be the CEOs of those corporations that come into our community. When I'm talking with our chamber and I'm talking to our community folks, obviously, we want kids to get skills to be able to complete jobs and do those types of things. But our vision has to be bigger than that. It isn't just about the job; it's about the career and about how they're prepared for the big world. And this partnership with Define is helping us to hone what that looks like, not only in classroom instruction, but how those kids then translate those skills into the real world when they go out into our workplaces with our industry partners. So we talk about project-based learning. Everyone knows what PBL is. So I won't delve into that very deeply, but the whole notion of what that looks like in classrooms has to be backed up by some sense of passion. You have to be passionate about it. You have to understand the importance of it and not just do PBL. It has to be something that becomes ingrained in the work you do. We choose that as a vehicle to help us get to that point because we want our kids to understand that you don't just learn algebra just to learn algebra. It applies to something. It shows up somewhere else. And we want them to be future ready when they go into the world. Much of the work we're doing in classrooms every day, not only here, but all across the country, is preparing kids for jobs that don't exist. They certainly didn't exist when I was a kid, and I don't want kids to experience the same type of education I did. Um, I learned despite some of the things that happen in classrooms. I want our kids to learn because of what happens in classrooms. And if they're able to learn those skills and then apply them in real life context, now we're talking about their career pathways really meaning something. And they get an opportunity to have an impact, not only for their lives in terms of taking care of families and paying finances and those types of things, but actually making a difference in the world. Ultimately, that's what we have to push our kids toward. That's what I'm extremely passionate about, coupled with the fact that I'd like to see us break the cycle of generational poverty that exists in our community and others. The only way to do that is to make sure kids are educated and able to understand what their place in space should be, and that their job is not only to take care of themselves, but to take care of others and to make society a better place. So we get really passionate when we talk about PBL and what it looks like in classrooms. I want our kids to be that passionate as well. Using the windows and mirrors framework, this is how we connect to our work and reflect on the things we've done. I'm really interested in the work that's been done by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, also from the Ohio State University. And I'll quote her very quickly when she talks about literacy in books. She says that books are sometimes windows, offering views of the world that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world's been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms the human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives, our own experiences as part of a larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means to self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. We're trying to use this as opportunity to couple what Dr. Bishop talks about in terms of what books do. We want our work to do the same thing. And if they're able to take their work from classrooms and apply it in real life context, now all of a sudden they can see themselves in the work. I always believe that they can't be it if they can't see it. So we want our industry partners to provide us with examples. That we want them to see people in certain spaces that our kids may not have seen before. What does a lawyer look like? What does a doctor look like? What does an entrepreneur look like? Our kids need to see that, because many of them, unfortunately, don't get out of their neighborhoods very often. So they don't get to see the bigger context of what the world offers. Our business partners help us give that to our kids on a regular basis. So we want to use these vehicles coupled with literacy to make sure our kids can go anywhere in the world and experience anything that they can at any point. So that's how we connect and reflect on what that work looks like and how it's showing up and translating to the skills of our kids. We want to promote student discourse. Kids need to talk. They don't need to sit in classrooms in straight lines, look straight ahead, and just listen to teachers talk. Kids need to grapple with ideas and problems. They need to make mistakes. They need to learn how to learn from those mistakes. They need to get wrong answers, so they understand, but understanding the process to getting that wrong answer so they can recreate it. Those experiences are crucial to how they learn. Discourse can also help us deal with much of the peer interactions that take place. We want our kids to understand how to grapple with conflict, whatever that looks like. and promoting student discourse allows us to address some of those issues. Fostering a sense of belonging is extremely important to our district. I think if you go around the country, you hear a lot of schools or a lot of districts talk about making sure our kids fit in. I don't want our kids to fit in. When you fit in, you simply bring yourself to the table and you're accepted because you're like everybody else in the room. When you belong, you bring your authentic self in the room and you're accepted for whoever you might be. That's what we should be striving for in education. That's what belonging looks like, where kids can be themselves in every context. And as I mentioned earlier, allowing for student voice and choice. I knew all of us growing up, we would come from a generation where, at least I am, from a generation where my mom told me very early, you do as I say, not as I do. And I don't really care what you think. Now, she changed as I got older, fortunately, but we want to value that voice. We want our kids to have a say in some things. We want them to talk about their opinions, even if they're wrong. If we can give them reasons why their opinions may be wrong, then perhaps they can learn from something from that experience. At the same time, we as the adults aren't always right. I, for one, can admit that. I want to be able to get our kids an opportunity to have voice in their work, in their classrooms, and then make some choices about who they want to be. In terms of choice, we talked about I have an internal goal that I kind of work toward in terms of what education looks like. If every student has 4 choices when he or she graduates from high school: 1, to go to a 204-year school; 2, to go into the military; 3, to go in the workplace; or 4, to be an entrepreneur. If every kid has all 4 of those choices and they get to make that choice themselves, then we've done our jobs. That should be a really hard choice for every kid. Unfortunately, throughout the history of education, we tend to put certain kids in certain boxes and keep other opportunities from other kids. We don't want to do that. We want all of our kids to have those ideas in mind and to be able to make those choices. That is what education should look like, in my opinion, and that's what we want to create for our kids. Dr. Pelton?
So in order to do that, we have to change the way that we address our teachers and how we provide the learning for them. I think in the past that professional learning has been looked at as more of a compliance thing, that I have to go. And some teachers, and just sitting through some that I've not really wanted to be a part of, that felt like going to detention. That's not what we want our teachers to think for professional learning. So we kind of use the diffusion of innovation model. We kind of customized it to fit our needs here. And we know that you always start with your trailblazers. Those are the teachers that are going to do things. They're excited about it. They're going to always move. Well, then they talk to people, and then they get more people on board. And then that's where your chasm starts. And that's where you start to transition and getting more of the mainstream. We know it's important to address all of these groups. We know we do them all differently, because you're always going to have those that are reluctant and need a little bit more of a push, so to speak. But we all learn at different rates and different times, just like our kids. We also know that PD has to be tiered for our learners, and we have to support them. And we know that when they learn more, our students learn more. So, okay, we can go to the next one. So how do we do this? Well, we're definitely committed to providing the resources and the support for our teachers. We know that the resources with the project-based learning, it sets the course for our teachers to experience, and it also builds their knowledge and skills, and it helps them, understand that the context, but it's authentic. This is a totally different way for them. Most of our teachers, we didn't go to school and we didn't learn about project-based learning. It was do pages in a book, answer the questions at the end, turn this in. Like I said, it was all about just learning for compliance. So we actually challenge our teachers to think about their own beliefs and assumptions. And are they focused on their teaching, or are they focused on what students are actually learning? So that's kind of a mindset that we're working to shift. We also want to make sure that our teachers are providing equitable opportunities for all of our students, meaning they have to understand our kids. You have to be culturally responsive. We believe that all of our kids, we set expectations for all of them, high expectations. We want to engage them in rigorous content. We want to provide entry points for all kids, no matter where the school is located. And we also want to make sure, regardless of their performance level, that they get what they need. And sometimes we are often, when we address our students that are not on grade level, we think that we can just simplify the task or eliminate some of the struggle, which is completely going against the whole point of learning. But with project-based learning, this scaffolds it. So we're helping them we're tiering instruction in a way that meets the needs of our students.
Really quick, she mentioned struggle. I think that's an important piece of what we want PBL to do for us. We want our kids to have productive struggle. Even the kids who've achieved very well for years, who tend to have things easy, they need struggle as well, because when they get to college or what happens after high school, they're going to have to experience that. And they don't know what struggle means, and they're constantly getting straight A's with no real challenge. We're not meeting their needs either.
So our professional development, our teachers are, our principals, all of our educators are learning. They're experiencing it as a student. They're actually being faced with some of the challenges that students will face. And this also gives them the opportunity to tailor instruction for their kids. They're collaborating with each other. They're combining the content with instructional strategies and it's helping them with their expertise, but it's also building a collaborative culture. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build our own and help learn from each other. And as you see, these pictures are all our teachers and our principals learning together. And you see they all have smiles on their faces. They're enjoying what they're doing. This is definitely not detention for them. So this is kind of the mindset that we're trying to do. We also want to make sure that we're providing feedback on the professional learning. It's not a sit and get. It's not a one and done. It's ongoing. We can always evolve. We can always do better. And we have that focus of continuous improvement. And then Dr. Brown mentioned earlier about changing a mindset. That's a struggle, but we know that we can do this. And when we're doing this and we're modeling it, we're saying so much to our kids. We're saying that being a lifelong learner, that's what it's about. That's how you face obstacles. That's how you solve problems. That's how we become better together.
I want to say something really quickly about those pictures. The vast majority of the folks in those pictures are our principals. And I walked into the PD. They were having an absolute ball. And it was almost as if they didn't know they were learning. Obviously they did, but that's how you can trick kids into making sure they understand the concepts you're trying to convey, by making sure they have as much fun and as much engagement as possible. And then they see the relevance of it. I'll add to that in terms of mindset. I often get asked, what is the biggest impediment to some of our work? And that's always the first place I go to, is to say it's mindset. If you've been in a place where you expect less of yourselves and you expect less of your kids, you get less of a result. And then changing that to now expect more, want more, and then essentially growing toward whatever that means. That means you have to get uncomfortable sometimes. And I think it's important that we subscribe to the notion of being comfortable with discomfort, because that's how we end up growing. I often will give an illustration of that when we're talking about what a snake does when it sheds its skin. As that skin's coming off, it's extremely vulnerable, it's extremely weak, it's prone to predators. Once that skin comes off and he rejuvenates, all of a sudden he's bigger, faster, stronger, sleeker. That discomfort helps us grow. And that's a new concept for some of us in terms of how we grow, what our district looks like. But that has to be paramount and foundational to all the work we're trying to get done. Because we can't get it done unless the mindset shifts from what it was to what we need it to be. We have a question in the chat. Do you want to address that question? I'll do that really quick. From Bernie, who says, does your PD assign them as PBL certified? And are there phrases to your PBL PD? Phases. Angie, you want to address that?
Right now, we're still working on building our trailblazers and our group that's going to the momentum for the rest of the group. So we don't actually have different levels or phases at this time, but we are strategically working to address the reluctant learners, to drink those that are just waiting to see it working, because for teachers, seeing is believing. They're not going to believe it until they see it. So the vast majority, when they see the Trailblazers and Transformers, when they see this working, that's when they get on board. So that's the phases that we're going through. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I'll add to that. The interesting thing is we're less than a year into this work, and we're already seeing roots be planted in terms of what it looks like and how classrooms begin to transform. So with some time, this is going to be impressive. It's going to be exciting. And perhaps we'll have more of those assignments and phases, because we intend to have a brand new crop of teachers who actually get into this work next year and in the years to come. Obviously, talking about what equity looks like and what it means. First of all, that word has been bastardized over the course of the last couple of years in terms of how people use it, and it's become a bad word in certain places, in certain spaces of the country. Here in Montgomery, equity is a very positive word. We want to talk about what kids have not had and how we can fill those gaps, and what kids don't have access to, and make sure we address those things. So the work we're doing is about equity, access, and opportunity. I say that in any place I go to, that those are the cornerstones of our work. So being equity focused is important. There are kids who are in more affluent families who get to do family projects or go on family trips and go places and do things that other kids don't get an opportunity to do. That hinders their ability to learn. So it's our job to make sure we get them those types of opportunities, however we can get those to them. This partnership with Define helps us to get some of that in classrooms, perhaps even get them outside of classrooms to see how that works. In designing projects and addressing student needs, all these things have to be taken into account. And I, as a product of a single parent household who grew up in poverty in a trailer with no running water, I'm extremely passionate about that work. And I don't care where kids come from or what their backgrounds might be or what their likes, dislikes, who their parents are. None of that matters. Our job is to make sure all kids have opportunities. This is one opportunity, one way we're providing those opportunities to our kids. And I can't wait to see it grow and flourish so that every kid can actually touch it. The whole notion of what a personalized, inclusive, yes, I'm using the word inclusive, which you also can't say in certain places, curriculum that promotes equity, equitable access, and opportunity for all students should be the work of every school district. That's what it's supposed to look like. In some places, when we talk about equity, people just think we're talking about racial issues or what have you. It's so much deeper than that. And I wish we would get that. We're talking about our students with special needs. We're talking our English language learners. We're talking about kids coming from that experience poverty. We're talking about single parent households. We're talking about kids that are raised by their siblings. We're talking about lack of access to basic things that many of us take for granted. That's what equity is about. That's what inclusiveness is about. I'll definitely shout out our LGBTQ plus population. I want them to be just as comfortable in classrooms as anyone else is. That's what this work is supposed to be like. And if we're going to be equity minded and equity focused, we need to be able to call that out and let people understand what that really means. I've had a lot of interesting conversations outside of district in reference to how that work looks and who should be included, because our job is all kids. Our job is not to get the kids who are like us, or even for that matter, the kids who are like our kids. Our job is about all kids, period. And we can't let impediments get in the way to prevent us from getting those things done. Our partnership with Defined is helping us not only to understand that, but to put our words into practice. And that's what's really exciting about what we have to come. Is that one yours, Angie?
That was yours.
This one's mine too? So
Yes, but
we're talking about real skill development. We have not only, I mentioned our magnet schools and our traditional schools earlier, we also have a CTE program that's fairly strong here that we're looking to grow. We have a school that's built strictly on CTE, which is our school that's called Impact. At the same time, we want to be able to build career partnerships and business partnerships across all of our schools so that kids can see things come to life in real life. Those partnerships, business-wise, in every one of our schools then will help us create our pathways. So if you're interested in being an architect, let's say, we can put you on a track starting in middle school where you actually can build and get experiences in that venue. Let's say you're interested in, I don't know, cybersecurity. we can talk about what that looks like early on and what it looks like from in your English class, what it may look like in your social studies class. That's what we want to build. And no, it is not in place yet, but that's what we hope to have come. Ensuring that PBL shows up in all of our classrooms is so important to making sure that skill, can't speak to that, applicability to the real world is important. They need to make sure those things translate in real time and in real life. And in talking about our Portrait of a Graduate and our partnership with Defined is important to that process as we map out what those workforce demands and goals look like. Our classroom opportunities and classroom designs need to be looking in that way. So if you're interested in going to banking, we give you some opportunities to see what that looks like. We're in conversations. I just had a meeting last week with 22 of our banks here in the area about what financial literacy will look like. I had a little piece to that. We have a state law that says all kids must have at least a half credit of financial literacy by the time they graduate. I personally, I think it's far too late. This should be happening in elementary school because I don't want our kids learning how to just write checks. Tell me who's the last person to write a check. They need to understand what credit looks like. They need to understand insurance. They need to understand retirement. They need to understand how to make their money work for them and perhaps learn how to write checks. It's so much bigger than that. So I'm hoping that we can build that pathway all the way through K-12. Those are the types of things that partnerships need to look like in the 21st century orientation of schools. And that's helping us map the future, not only for our workforce and what they do to go out and fill jobs and grow their careers, but basically how they take care of their families and take care of society. Do you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to say, what's so exciting here in Montgomery is that we don't have to do any of this. We get to do this. And it's just very good to see that, like, people that are so passionate about changing a system that has faced a lot of issues in the past. So this is exciting for us. And I can't wait for us to have this conversation a year from now, 2 years from now, and just the transformation of where we were and where we are and where we'll be. So we're just really excited about it. The next video clip is just a sample of, it's a class, well, it's 2 classrooms at Percy Julian. They were talking about cryptography. I think I said that correct. And they did a little project, and I just wanted to share the little video. It's just a little short clip of some of our students.
I like Defined Learning because it was very interactive and it allowed me to look at like careers pertaining to the project that I would be interested in.
All right, so pre-calculus students were tasked with completing a cryptography project using Defined Learning. The standard was pre-calculus 23 about inverse matrices. I told the students that the project was self-directed. I went through the instructions with them after a formal lesson on inverse matrices and time to practice the skill. So Defined Learning projects are self-explanatory for teachers and students. However, I have found that the students were challenged because instead of being fed information to regurgitate, they were required to think critically on their own. I am very proud of my students. They did their research and created products displaying that they are college and career ready. These types of projects expose students to careers that actually use the standards they're learning in a real world setting.
Hi, I'm Ms. Williams. I'm a CTE teacher here at Percy Julian High School. And over the past few weeks, my students, over 70 of them in fact, received their certification in guest services, which inspired this collage that you see right behind me. I wanted the students to see firsthand what it's like in the hotel industry, what they could do, what career path that they could take, which was my inspiration. But also too, I wanted to create a lasting memory, one that they can reflect upon for years and years to come.
I like Defined Learning because of how user-friendly and easy to navigate it was.
I like the
So you can see that passion is starting to take root. They're understanding much of what we're trying to accomplish for our kids and how we can transform what teaching and learning looks like in classrooms. That is, it's heavy work. It's hard, it's difficult, but it's the work we should be doing, and therefore it's worth it. As Angie said, we're excited to get to do the work each day. Not that we have to, we get to. And we see our kids benefit from that in a big way. Being here less than 2 years and already seeing changes makes me excited about what the future looks like. 5 years from now, I don't think we'll be able to recognize the place. And I think it's important that we understand the historical context that we're coming from, what we're trying to build here. And I should have added from the very top, doing this work in Montgomery is unique in a couple of ways, but the history here is so rich. You have the convergence of the civil rights movement, which everyone knows about, along with being the birthplace of the Confederacy. How does the intersection of that history work toward building a community that understands where it's going and what it has to provide for its kids is a crucial step to making sure they're going to be viable citizens of the world. And we are indeed very fortunate and excited to be able to do this work every day. So because we're the last ones, I think we're going to save you about 5 to 10 minutes away from whatever your afternoon beverage might be. But we're happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Well, Dr. Brown, I know there were some things that resonated with me that I want to just share, but one question that we have is, what's the best way to get community partners vetted for job shadowing and internships?
That's a great question. I'll give you kind of a brief history of how we got to where we are. When I arrived, there wasn't a really good relationship between us and our Chamber of Commerce. And our business industry folks weren't that interested in the work we were doing. So I had to be very purposeful about where I went, who I talked to. So it started with the chamber, and I did some presentations in front of the chamber when I first got here to cultivate relationships. I was invited to become part of the board of the chamber, and then all of a sudden, when people saw the work we were starting to do and what we were talking about, they were interested in what we were doing and wanted to be part of it. So then, once I got them all in the room together, now I've got you captured. I want everybody's contact information. Everybody has ours, has mine, and we can start talking about what these partnerships look like. So we have a culinary program at Carver High School, which is fantastic, but hasn't always had the type of support from the restaurant industry here in the community, which is very rich to help it flourish. We now have partners to help us push that forward. The head chef at Ravello Restaurant, which is a great Italian restaurant here in town, is now partnering with that group. So we've been very purposeful about making sure everybody's at the table can hear the big picture, presenting your vision first about what you want it to do, and then allowing people to fit in. Now, the partnership with Define helps us to cultivate what those in routes might be. So now we have this pathway. Let's inject this business partner here. We have this pathway. Where does this business partner fit? So that's essentially how we've gone about doing it. And now we're at the point where now we need to make it come to root. We have a lot of conversations that are taking place. We're in the stage now where we actually get the work done. And the real hard work starts now.
And you said something about this earlier, Tracy, but we want our students to come back and be teachers. We want them to want to come back to our district. I know you were mentioning something about wanting to come back, but that is our goal, is to grow our own. And that's something we're also excited about.
So in the thread, another question was, I enjoyed hearing one of your teachers speak on partnerships with Define Learning. Dr. Pelton, can you elaborate more on this partnership?
Are they talking about with Define Learning?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just started this the end of last year, I believe it was. And so
Yeah, the summer.
We started out with, of course, we were looking for our trailblazers to get things started. So we started out with some of our STEM teachers and the principals. They went through some training, some PD, and as we were going on, then we involved another set of principals and their STEM teachers. And now we have moved to our secondary principals and 2 teachers from each secondary school. Interesting, some of our principals were a little reluctant to move forward with this because they were seeing it as something else they had to do, because they didn't truly understand that this is the work. This is what we're preparing kids to do and to go forth. But those teachers from those schools, the next day, they came and they were just excited. They couldn't wait to get back to talk to the English department, to talk to the math, and how they were going to work cross-curricular to do these projects, which is just so exciting to hear those conversations. Just because people are changing mindsets, just the conversations that were happening in the beginning versus what the ones you're hearing now, they're completely different.
Yeah, I think that's important. Once the teachers caught fire and got excited about it, the principals really had no choice. Because we know that's where the rubber hits the road. The teachers are the ones that drive that work. And they got so enthused by the fact they can make learning come to life in classrooms that the principals kind of had to get on board whether they wanted to or not. Now, once we got them involved in those activities you saw in the pictures, they were completely sold at that point because now all of a sudden they realize how much fun learning can be and should be. So this partnership has helped us cultivate that in quite a way.